Constructing an offshore oil rig is one of the most formidable engineering challenges on the planet, requiring the creation of a massive, self-contained industrial city that must float in hostile ocean environments, withstand hurricane-force winds, and safely extract volatile hydrocarbons from miles beneath the seafloor. The process begins not in the ocean, but in vast steel mills where thousands of tons of high-strength, low-alloy steel are forged. Marine environments are exceptionally brutal, subjecting metals to constant corrosive saltwater, freezing temperatures, and relentless cyclical stress from crashing waves. To survive this, the steel is alloyed with precise amounts of manganese, nickel, and niobium. These elements alter the microscopic crystalline structure of the metal, granting it immense tensile strength while ensuring it remains highly ductile, meaning it will bend rather than snap when slammed by a 50-foot wave. Once the specific metallurgical recipe is achieved, the molten steel is cast into thick slabs and rolled into massive plates while still glowing red-hot. The rolling process aligns the grain structure of the steel, further increasing its strength before it is shipped to the fabrication yards. At the shipyard, the construction of the rig's foundational structure begins. Whether the rig is a fixed platform supported by a steel jacket resting on the seafloor, or a floating semi-submersible platform, the fundamental building blocks are giant steel tubes called tubulars. Manufacturing these tubulars requires massive hydraulic plate rolling machines. A flat steel plate, which can be several inches thick, is fed between three enormous hardened steel rollers. As the rollers apply thousands of tons of hydraulic pressure, the steel undergoes plastic deformation, bending permanently into a perfect cylinder. Engineers must calculate the exact yield stress of the steel plate to account for springback, the slight unbending that occurs when the hydraulic pressure is released. Once formed into a cylinder, the seam of the tube must be welded seamlessly. This is done using a highly efficient automated process called submerged arc welding. A continuous spool of bare steel wire is fed into the seam, but the actual welding arc is entirely buried beneath a thick layer of granular flux powder. As the electric arc melts the steel, the flux melts alongside it, creating a liquid slag that floats to the top of the molten weld pool. This slag acts as an impenetrable barrier, protecting the liquid steel from oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere, which would otherwise cause brittle microscopic bubbles in the weld. As the metal cools, the solid slag simply peels away, revealing a perfectly smooth, defect-free joint. These individual steel tubes must then be joined together to form the massive truss structure of the rig's hull or jacket. The most critical points in this framework are the nodes, the complex intersections where 3 or 4 gigantic tubes meet at varying angles. Cutting a smaller tube to fit perfectly flush against the curved surface of a larger tube requires a specialized saddle cut. Giant 5-axis computer-controlled plasma cutters slice through the thick steel, continuously adjusting the angle of the plasma torch to create a precisely beveled edge. This bevel ensures that when the welders fill the joint, the molten metal penetrates all the way through the thickness of the steel, creating a full penetration weld. Because these nodes will bear the concentrated stress of the entire platform, the welding process is meticulously controlled. The steel around the joint is preheated using heavy-duty induction coils to drive out any trapped moisture and to slow down the cooling rate of the weld. If the steel cools too rapidly, microscopic amounts of hydrogen can become trapped in the crystalline lattice, leading to cold cracking long after the rig has been deployed. To guarantee that the structural integrity is flawless, every critical weld undergoes rigorous non-destructive testing. Technicians use phased-array ultrasonic testing devices, which send high-frequency sound waves deep into the solid steel. If the sound waves hit an internal defect, like a microscopic void, a trapped piece of slag, or a tiny hairline crack, the echoes bounce back to a receiver, mapping the invisible flaw on a digital screen. Any imperfect welds are immediately gouged out and completely remade. As the tubulars and nodes are welded together, the structure grows to the size of a skyscraper. Moving these colossal subassemblies requires specialized equipment known as self-propelled modular transporters. These are flatbed vehicles equipped with hundreds of independent, computer-controlled, hydraulically leveled axles, capable of lifting and driving thousands of tons of steel across the shipyard without tipping. Massive crawler cranes, standing hundreds of feet tall, lift the sections into place within a gigantic dry dock, where the primary hull or jacket is assembled. Because this steel will spend its entire operational life submerged in highly corrosive seawater, it must be fiercely protected. The entire structure is blasted with high-pressure abrasive grit to strip away any mill scale and expose the raw, white metal underneath. It is then rapidly coated in multiple layers of heavy-duty marine epoxy and polyurethane paint, creating a thick barrier against the salt water. However, paint alone is never enough. To provide a deeper layer of defense, engineers utilize the principles of electrochemistry by attaching hundreds of large blocks made of zinc or aluminum directly to the submerged portions of the steel hull. These blocks serve as galvanic sacrificial anodes. Because zinc and aluminum are more chemically reactive than steel, the corrosive electrochemical reaction of the salt water attacks the anodes instead of the rig's structural framework. The anodes slowly dissolve over many years, sacrificing themselves so the primary steel remains completely pristine. While the hull or jacket is being assembled, the rig's topside is constructed simultaneously in separate modules. The topside is the actual working factory and living space of the rig, sitting high above the wave crests. Building it modularly allows different specialized teams to work in parallel. One module houses the immense power generation systems, typically consisting of marine-grade gas turbines that can run on diesel or natural gas extracted directly from the well. These turbines spin massive copper-wound alternators, generating enough electricity to power a small city. The power is routed through massive transformers and miles of heavy copper cabling to supply the drill motors, pumps, and living quarters. Another module contains the crew accommodations, which are built to the standards of a specialized hotel, but enclosed within heavy blast-resistant steel walls to protect the crew from potential industrial accidents. The modules are heavily insulated against the deafening noise of the machinery and the extreme weather outside. Once the hull is complete and the topside modules are finished, the two massive halves must be joined together in a process known as mating. For floating semi-submersible rigs, this is often done using a delicate float-over operation. The gigantic lower hull is towed out of the dry dock into deeper water. Water is then deliberately pumped into its internal ballast tanks, sinking the hull deep beneath the surface until only the very tops of its towering support columns remain visible. Meanwhile, the fully assembled topside, weighing tens of thousands of tons, is loaded onto specialized transport barges and floated directly over the submerged hull. Using GPS positioning, laser guidance, and heavy mooring winches, the topside is perfectly aligned above the support columns. Then, powerful pumps inside the submerged hull begin pushing the ballast water out, replacing it with air. The massive buoyancy of the submerged pontoons forces the hull to rise up out of the water. As it rises, precision-machined steel pins on the topside slot perfectly into receptors on the hull columns. Elastomeric shock absorbers inside the joints cushion the impact of any gentle wave movement. Once the full weight of the topside is resting on the hull, the two halves are permanently welded together, completely unifying the offshore rig. Getting this artificial island to its permanent location in the open ocean requires a fleet of powerful ocean-going tugboats. The tow can take several weeks, during which the rig is carefully navigated through changing weather systems. Once it reaches the target coordinates, the rig must be locked into position. For a floating rig, this requires a deeply engineered mooring system. Specialized anchor-handling vessels drop massive steel cylinders, known as suction piles, down to the muddy seafloor. Remotely operated underwater vehicles, or ROVs, dive down to plug high-powered hydraulic pumps into the top of these cylinders. The pumps suck the trapped seawater out of the cylinder's interior, creating a powerful pressure differential. The immense weight of the ocean above then pushes down on the cylinder, driving it deep into the dense clay of the seabed. Thick steel chains and heavy-duty wire ropes connect these deeply embedded anchors back to the floating rig. Massive hydraulic winches on the rig's deck pull the chains incredibly tight, tensioning the entire system to restrict the platform's movement. To further stabilize the rig against the chaotic forces of wind and waves, an automated active ballasting system is utilized. A network of sensors constantly monitors the tilt and roll of the deck. If a severe storm pushes against one side of the rig, powerful pumps instantly transfer hundreds of tons of seawater between different pontoon compartments far below the surface, dynamically shifting the center of gravity to keep the working deck perfectly level. With the rig safely moored, the true work of drilling can finally begin. The most prominent feature on the topside is the derrick, a towering steel lattice structure that houses the hoisting equipment necessary to lower miles of heavy steel pipe into the earth. Hanging from the top of the derrick is the top drive, an incredibly powerful, heavy-duty electric motor that grips the top of the drill pipe and spins it with immense rotational torque. The pipe itself, known as the drill string, is assembled piece by piece on the drill floor by automated mechanical arms and specialized rig workers. At the very bottom of the drill string is the drill bit. Unlike a traditional drill bit that cuts like a screw, an offshore drill bit crushes and shears the rock. It is typically a solid block of tungsten carbide matrix studded with polycrystalline diamond compact cutters. These synthetic diamonds are among the hardest materials synthesized by humanity. As the top drive spins the drill string, the massive weight of the steel pipes above pushes the diamond cutters into the seabed, shearing away the solid rock through pure mechanical friction and extreme pressure. As the diamond bit grinds deeper into the earth, it generates massive amounts of heat and a constant flow of crushed rock chips that must be continuously removed from the hole. This is accomplished using a highly engineered fluid known as drilling mud. This mud is not simple dirt and water. It is a meticulously formulated chemical mixture heavily weighted with barium sulfate. Deep inside the rig, massive high-pressure mud pumps push this thick fluid down through the hollow center of the rotating drill string. The mud travels miles down the pipe and exits through tiny tungsten nozzles engineered directly into the drill bit. The fluid blasts out at tremendous velocity, instantly cooling the synthetic diamonds and blasting the freshly cut rock chips away from the cutting face. The mud then reverses direction, carrying the rock cuttings all the way back up to the surface through the annular space, the gap between the outside of the drill pipe and the wall of the borehole. When this rocky mud mixture returns to the rig, it flows over massive vibrating screens called shale shakers. The fine metal mesh of the shakers violently vibrates, allowing the liquid mud to fall through into holding tanks while the solid rock chips bounce off the edge and are collected for safe disposal. The clean mud is then continuously pumped back down the well in a closed-loop system. Beyond cooling the bit and carrying away debris, the drilling mud serves an even more critical purpose. Deep underground reservoirs of oil and gas are highly pressurized by the weight of the millions of tons of earth above them. If the drill bit punctures one of these pressurized zones, the oil wants to aggressively blast up the borehole to the surface. The extreme density of the heavy barium sulfate mud creates a massive column of hydrostatic pressure pushing down the hole. This downward fluid pressure acts as a heavy liquid plug, perfectly balancing the upward pressure of the oil reservoir and preventing it from escaping. However, drilling relies on multiple layers of redundant safety, which brings us to the blowout preventer, or BOP. This colossal piece of safety equipment, often standing 5 stories tall and weighing hundreds of tons, is lowered to the seafloor and locked directly onto the wellhead before deep drilling even begins. The drill pipe passes straight through the center of the BOP. If the mud pressure ever fails to hold back a sudden surge of highly pressurized gas or oil from the reservoir, the BOP is the ultimate failsafe. It contains a stack of massive hydraulic valves. The first line of defense are the annular preventers, heavy rings of synthetic rubber reinforced with steel. When activated by highly pressurized hydraulic fluid, these rubber rings forcefully squeeze inward, wrapping tightly around the spinning drill pipe and sealing the gap to stop any fluid from rushing upward. If the pressure continues to rise and threatens the entire rig, the BOP utilizes its most extreme measure, the blind shear rams. Powered by thick steel accumulators filled with highly compressed nitrogen gas, these rams do not rely on the rig's electrical power. When triggered, immense hydraulic force drives two massive blades made of hardened tool steel together. These blades are so powerful they instantly slice completely through the thick steel drill pipe inside the wellhead. The crushed ends of the severed pipe are pushed out of the way, and massive steel blocks lock tightly together, permanently sealing the well under hundreds of tons of mechanical force and averting a catastrophic blowout. Once the well has successfully reached the target reservoir safely, the drill pipe is removed, and heavy steel casing is permanently cemented into the walls of the hole to prevent it from collapsing. A specialized tool containing shaped explosive charges is lowered down to the depth of the oil reservoir. When detonated, jets of superheated plasma punch through the steel casing, through the cement, and deep into the surrounding rock, creating pathways for the trapped hydrocarbons. Driven by the immense natural pressure of the earth, a turbulent mixture of crude oil, natural gas, salt water, and sand begins rushing up the production tubing toward the rig. When this chaotic, high-pressure mixture reaches the top side of the rig, it is far too volatile and pressurized to be safely stored or pumped to land. It first passes through a heavily reinforced choke manifold, a network of thick titanium and steel piping featuring specialized valves containing solid tungsten carbide stems. By forcing the raging fluid through incredibly narrow, adjustable openings, the choke manifold creates massive friction, safely bleeding off the extreme pressure of the reservoir and dropping the fluid's velocity to a manageable level. From the manifold, the raw well stream enters the processing module, specifically the primary three-phase separators. These are gigantic, horizontally mounted steel pressure vessels. When the turbulent fluid enters the massive volume of the separator, it dramatically slows down, allowing the fundamental physics of gravity and density to take over. Because natural gas is extremely light, it instantly bubbles out of the liquid and rises to the top of the vessel, where it is piped away for dehydration and compression. The remaining liquid mixture of oil and water slowly flows through a series of internal steel baffles. Because salt water is denser than crude oil, the water gradually settles to the very bottom of the tank, while the lighter crude oil floats on top. Inside the vessel, precisely engineered weir plates act like internal dams. The floating oil gracefully spills over the top of the highest weir into a dedicated collection chamber, while the heavier water is drawn off from the bottom. The separated water is sent through complex hydrocyclones to spin out any remaining microscopic drops of oil before it is safely disposed of. The natural gas is often used directly in the rig's gas turbines to generate electricity to keep the entire massive operation running, while the excess gas is compressed and exported. The fully separated and stabilized crude oil is carefully metered and pumped into massive, thick-walled subsea export pipelines that stretch across the ocean floor back to refineries on land. In remote deep-water locations, without pipeline infrastructure, the oil is pumped directly into the holds of specialized shuttle tankers that periodically dock with the rig. From the molecular structuring of the steel in the foundry, through the precise geometry of its welded nodes, to the complex hydrodynamics of the separation vessels, the offshore oil rig operates constantly, day and night, standing as a towering feat of mechanical engineering and fluid dynamics seamlessly working together in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth.